We were just waiting because we didn't want it to be something that we made happen. We wanted it to be like we both, like our mission really is just, we love Jesus. And whatever he asks us to do, we want our answer to be yes.
This is a podcast I have been wanting to tape forever, and it's been on the card for months. And how lucky is it that Kim is an Oregonian like me, and we were able to tee up a time to connect, to tape this podcast. Kim and Jed moved from Oregon to Ukraine, I think it was almost 6 years ago. And I have followed their journey from the moment that they decided to move from Oregon all the way to living in the Ukraine and now adopting 2 of the boys from the orphanage they work at into their family. This episode is so heart-wrenchingly beautiful. There are moments when I was choking back tears. There are moments when I was absolutely elated as to the joy that they experience. And I would just encourage you to really listen to this episode. One, if you want to know what it's like to be someone of service overseas, but more importantly, what is it like to be a true change maker? Not just necessarily an influencer, someone who influences people online, but someone who is on the ground, in the trenches, doing the work. This is such a beautiful podcast. It's such an amazing journey. The stories that she shares are absolutely incredible. And it was truly a joy for me to interview Kim. And I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did taping it.
Hello, Kim. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay, so I started following you, stalking you. I don't even know. Like, we have a mutual friend named Sarah.
Yeah.
And she had put up that you guys were moving to the Ukraine. And I think that I started following you like a year before you even moved.
We moved in 2013. So that's been a long time.
Yeah, so it's been like over 6 years. So Tell us a little bit about this, what you guys are doing now. And then I want to ask you questions about your journey and how you're sustaining it and all this kind of fun, interesting stuff about your life. I think it's so cool.
So I'm married to Jed, and
Yes.
we founded Wide Awake International, a nonprofit, back in 2013. And I'm losing track of how many kids I have. We have 6 kids. We have 6 kids. Addie, Ezra, Hava, Seth, Vladik, Evie. And we live in Ukraine. We moved to Ukraine in 2013. And the goal of Wide Awake International is the deinstitutionalization of people with special needs in Ukraine. So we have a house that we renovated and land, and we're bringing guys out of the institution that have disabilities of varying types and bringing them into family life instead of institutions where they would live until they died. So that's what we do.
So my question then becomes, you lived in Oregon. You had, I think, 4 kids or 5 kids at the time. What was the call that was like, yeah, we're moving to the Ukraine? I remember when you guys first moved there, I don't even know what you guys lived in. Like, it was pretty, I don't even know if apartment is a fair comment, but it was a pretty rough situation. And you had 0 language.
Right. Yeah.
So talk to me about what is it in you as a couple that said, no matter what, we're doing this?
We knew before we got married, like I knew forever, it was my dream forever since I was a little girl. Like
Really?
I'm going to be on mommies and orphans. And I just always dreamed about that. But that was more like a little orphan Annie orphanage type dream, not. And so I went to school to become an RN because I thought that would be useful whenever I took care of orphans, however that would look. And then when Jen and I got married, we knew adoption, orphan care would be a part of our lives. Like that was like a
non-negotiable.
non-negotiable. And then we also both really didn't want to live in the US forever. We didn't know, like, we didn't have a place in mind, but we both knew like the work we wanted to do would lead us overseas at some point. So for many years, I mean, we got married in 2002 and we didn't move till 2013. So for a lot of years, we were just waiting because we didn't want it to be something that we made happen. We wanted it to be like we both, like, our mission really is just, we love Jesus, and whatever he asks us to do, we want our answer to be yes. And so we didn't want it to just be something that we tried to make happen. So we were just waiting until we felt like God was showing us exactly where, exactly who. And so while we were waiting, we did foster care. As you know, somebody had said to us at one point when I was like frustrated that we still lived in Oregon, they were like, you should take care of foster children, because really that's orphan care.
It is, yeah.
When, you know, they have families, but it's like the only kind of orphan care you can really do in the US. So we started doing medically fragile foster care because I was a nurse, and we adopted our son Seth from foster care. So one night Jed was working late and Seth was still a baby at that point. We had 3 biological kids, and then Seth was a baby and we were fostering him. And I remember I was like snuggling him on the couch and I was reading blogs. That was when blogs were like the thing.
I know. I remember that. Gosh. It feels like a lifetime ago.
I know. Yeah, blogs were the thing. And I don't know, somehow I stumbled on this blog of this lady who had just returned from adopting 2 little girls from Ukraine, and they both had Down syndrome. And, you know, her blog led me to someone else's blog, and I was down this rabbit hole of blogs of people who had adopted from mostly Eastern Europe, but also China, you know, had adopted kids specifically with special needs, like on purpose. And I had always said, like, yes, we'll adopt, but there will never be special needs. Like, I could never do that, which is hilarious.
It is very funny.
Now.
You have been humbled at the core. You've been humbled at the core.
Ever. Yeah, so I had never been interested in special needs adoption. It wasn't on my radar. But these blogs, like, I saw how kids with disabilities, orphans with disabilities, are treated in places like Ukraine, Russia, Bulgaria, which is improving. But there's some institutions that are not terrible, although no child should ever live in an institution, period. But some are, of course, better than others. And, you know, the kids with really high needs, just from what it looked like, they were just treated like animals and not really like humans at all. And my heart was totally broken. I feel like I have like a soft heart, but never like that. Like I was just, it was like a fire, like, we have to do something. This is, you know, we have to do something. So Jed gets home from work and I'm just like, crying on the couch. And he's like, what happened? And I told him all about it. And I just like, we have to do something. And he's like, slow down, you know, which that's often how it is with us. Like, I get all fiery and he's like, slow down. Thank God he says slow down. I don't know what we would be doing if I didn't.
My husband's the same. He's the brakes. I'm the pedal. Yeah.
So he said, well, let's pray. Like, let's pray and ask God how he would want us to respond. So we started praying about it and felt like really like we were supposed to pursue adoption, to adopt a little boy that lived in Ukraine. And we started all the documents, and, you know, adoption is super expensive and we didn't have the money for it. But all these miraculous ways money was coming to us without us even really telling people about it. And we started doing all the documents. But in Ukraine, you can't pre-select a child. You can like move towards, you can have it in your heart and in your mind, you're going to adopt a certain child.
Wow.
But you can't pre-select. So you don't get matched with a child until you arrive in Ukraine for the adoption process.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's a huge risk.
Yeah. It's something, when you're adopting from Ukraine, you have to hold on to everything super loosely because it's not this happens, then this happens. It's super flexy, like you don't know what's going to happen. Much like living in Ukraine.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember reading some of your stories and I'm like, it's like cold, 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 hot, 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 bang. Like it's nothing, 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 bang. Like it's just, crazy.
You have to really be flexible. So while we were in process with our documents, another family was adopting from the same orphanage that this little boy lived in. And they were adopting a little girl and they fell in love with this little boy and they added him to their adoption. And so we couldn't adopt him. And, you know, we were super heartbroken.
Yeah.
Like, even though he wasn't our son yet, we had decided, you know, this kid will probably, you know, there's a high possibility this kid will live with us for the rest of his lives. Like, goodbye, empty nesters. Like, goodbye, you know?
Yeah.
So we had like come down to it where we like made that decision. And then he was gone. And so we were devastated. We didn't know what to do. We were like, God, we know you said to do this. And even miracles happened where there was money, where there shouldn't have been money. What was that for? I don't understand. And I'm instantly like, oh, it's just one kid. And I'm like online, like, you know, searching for more kids. And Jed is like, hold on. So he's like, I don't know what it was about, but I think we need a pause. And so he was out like working in the yard. And I remember this day so clearly. And he felt like God spoke to him like deep, you know, not like audible, but just, he just sensed this, you know, he sensed the Lord saying, Jed, I needed you to love that little boy with a father's heart. I needed you to be all in for that little boy because I need you to love many boys.
Wow.
And, you know, he came in and told me that. And you know, we learned in that process that we have this end goal in mind where we think things are going to end up. And a lot of times it's about the journey of getting, you know, the journey we're on where the end goal, the end of it is going to look different than we thought. But the journey to get us there is the really important part. And us just laying ourselves down, like we're going to take this boy and we have no idea what that's going to do to our lives, but it's the right thing to do. Like we had to get to that point because there was a lot more coming after that. And if we would have been, if in the very beginning, it would have been like, hey, Jed and Kim, like, will you move your family to Ukraine and like have adult men come and live with you and forever?
Yeah.
Would be like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Will you adopt one little boy? Yes, we will. And so that got us going. And so we went to Ukraine.
So the child you weren't able to adopt, which, I mean, luckily they got adopted to somebody else.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, let's go to Ukraine because we can't get rid of this message that we feel has been put into our hearts.
Yeah, we just thought, let's just go to Ukraine and see what people are doing in the area of orphans with disabilities, because we thought like, man, like the best thing, like people adopting individual kids is awesome and it's super necessary and it's something that we should be doing, but not everybody can be adopted. Like there's some crazy number, like 100,000 kids in institutions in Ukraine. So realistically, they're not all going to be adopted, and many of them aren't even able to be adopted because their parents have their rights, they're social orphans, or they're already adults.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that was really surprising to me when you guys were, I follow you guys, for no pun intended, religiously on Facebook, and it's really interesting to me that, how old is it, 13?
Well, it's 6 for U.S. citizens. You can't internationally adopt anyone over the age of 16.
Okay. So once they turn 16, they're basically, they're at the when you walked into this path, there were no other options for these boys and also girls in the Ukraine. Once it's potentially over 16, it's institution for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think Ukrainians can adopt them when they're 17, but they mostly don't. They don't have the resources. Like, there's a reason why people feel they can't take care of their kids with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. So you go to the Ukraine with your 3 children who are under the age of 6? 4 children under the age of 6.
Yeah, we just went, just me and Jed by ourselves. We contacted a bunch of organizations that were working, that we found on, basically. And we were like, can we come and visit you? So we went there and we just traveled around for a couple weeks, seeing what was happening. The institution that we work at now, we visited there. That was one of our stops. And I remember the first time we walked in there, we were just like surrounded by all these boys / men. And it was super stinky and they were all really dirty and, you know, there's drool and there's all, you know, it's just a really bad place. And they were swarming us because we thought, what if we go to one of these places and we like can't even handle being there?
Yeah.
You know, like, let's check it out. And I remember we looked at each other over the crowd and our eyes met, me and Jed, and we were just like, yes, like this is it for us. This is it. Which doesn't even make sense.
I actually think it makes complete sense because one of the things that as like a kind of, I would call myself a very greenhorn Christian. Like I wasn't like raised in a church. I'm really mindful of kind of being really mindful of the dogma of kind of religious practices. Like, okay, well, what is the word? Like, what is Jesus saying? I'm like, that's what Jesus did. You know, he didn't walk into like the shrines. He didn't walk into the clean floors and the polished children. He walked into exactly what you were, right? Where people were desperate to be loved. It actually makes me a bit teary just that you knew in that moment. I'm like, when we are called to do things, I feel like it can't be, sometimes we think it should be pretty. It should be palatable. It should be manageable. We should still be able to go on Instagram and Facebook and have all the luxuries of Netflix. But it's like when we are called to do that work, when we are called to do service work, it is not about us. It is about serving people who need it. And that's exactly what you guys did. So I don't think it's ironic at all. I couldn't imagine you going into like some perfectly polished orphanage, if that even exists, and just going, oh yeah, this is it. This is perfect. This is great. They're on a schedule. They all have baths and showers and nannies and stimulation. And no, that's not what you were called to do. So I think I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew, well, at the end of that trip, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to, you know, are we going to go back to the U.S., work really hard at our jobs, make money and send it to people in Ukraine that are doing the work?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do we need to move our family there? Because if local people can do the work, it's so much better because they don't have the language and the cultural barriers and all of that. But we couldn't find, and it doesn't mean they didn't exist, but we couldn't find people that were doing exactly what was in our heart to do, which was not only to visit them in their need, like to visit them in the institution, but to get them out. Like,
yes.
You know, our dream is that that institution will not exist, that it will be closed down. And so in order to do that, we got to figure out a way to get them out.
Yeah. So how many boys / men, I can't believe men, like I remember reading some of your stories and they're like, we think they're 27. We think that they're 30. We're not 100% sure. If you think about it for too long, it's just absolutely heartbreaking. It's devastating. How many boys are currently in your orphanage at the moment?
I think the number comes and goes because we just had a couple adoptions.
I'd love to hear about that too.
Yeah. There's about 85. It's a state-run institution for boys and men ages 4 to 35.
Wow. So what happens after 35?
Well, it used to be that they'd be transferred to like an home for elderly people.
Like a nursing home.
Yeah. And then they just stay there for the rest of their lives.
So it's just
But
like an older adult institution, essentially.
Yeah. But right now, they're reorganizing everything in the region that we live in. And so right now, everything is paused and nobody's being transferred. Nobody's coming from the baby house orphanage to ours, and no one's leaving. So it's going to stay a little bit static for right now, which is good.
So you basically, obviously you've moved, you guys are now in the process of building a house, which is, it's beautiful. Like you guys have this giant backyard. It's like basically a field. And there's like a little pathway from your house, I think, over to the orphanage. So that essentially there's like a little link. No?
It's far.
Oh, it is far. Okay.
Yeah.
So your vision at the moment is how you've got Boris that is in your care. He's an older adult. And then you've got Vladik, who you guys have adopted.
Yeah. We adopted
his transformation. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Yeah. Can you just tell me about Vladik when you first... can you just tell me about Vladik? I love him. Like, I absolutely love him. And I love this idea for people who are listening who maybe are feeling like, wow, this is in my heart too. I'd love to adopt. What does it look like? Yeah. So you move your kids over.
Yeah.
You live in the apartment.
In 2013. Yeah, we were living in an apartment. We were volunteering for another organization that would go to the institution once a week just to like figure out how to live in Ukraine and get connected to the orphanage, get relationship with the administration. Because in Ukraine, it's all about who you know.
Yeah, of course.
Then we started going another day a week, just the two of us, just me and Jed. And we were specifically working in this one building of the institution for the boys with the highest level of need. Maybe they're blind, maybe can't walk, maybe they have a lot of seizures, stuff like that. And Vladik lived in that building. He was there. He moved to that building when he was 4 from like a baby orphanage. And yeah, we didn't intend to adopt any of the boys. How can you go there and be like, I don't want that one when there's but yeah, Vladik went to a summer camp that another organization puts on.
Yes.
They do a summer camp for kids with disabilities every summer, and they always take 6 guys from the orphanage to that camp. And they took Vlad to camp one year, and our kids just loved him, which is really interesting because he was not verbal. He had like one word. Wow. If you asked him how he was, he would say like the equivalent of fine. And that's it. And he would scream and shriek like when he was excited. He was super institutional in his behaviors. But our kids really connected with him. And one night we were going to bed at camp, and it was the lights were out, and I was asking my kids like, what was the best part of the day and the hardest part of your day? And our son Ezra said, oh, Mom, I know your hardest part of the day. And I said, oh, what was that? And he said, well, when they were doing Special Olympics, which they do, and they were giving out the medals, and the guys from the orphanage went up, you were crying. And I said, well, I was crying because I was so proud of them, and I was so happy to see them have fun, but I was also crying because they were the only ones that didn't have a mommy to take them up to get their medal. And I know tomorrow that they have to go home, and that their home is a really terrible place. And then it was quiet for a second, and then I just hear this like wailing, crying. And our son Ezra was just bawling his eyes out, and he's like, why do they have to go back there? Like, why does Vladik not have a mommy? And then he said, how long is it going to take his mom to find him? Oh. And I was like, oh, no. We didn't even know if he was available for adoption. And so we asked, and he was. And we really wanted to, like, we started like getting it in our mind, like, what would it look like to adopt Vladik? Is it even kind to adopt a child with special needs in a society that doesn't accept them? You know, like,
that's such a good question.
Yeah,
such a good question.
And there's no special ed. Like, you know, is it selfish of us to say he should be with us?
Yes, I love that question. I love how sensitive and how responsible that question is in the context that you're living in. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just kind of thought about it, and we had a pretty hard fall. And at Christmas time, we decided to do a video to advocate for his adoption, because we thought, well, if we aren't going to do it, we need to get him a family, because he was already 15. And so his time was running out. And so, yeah, we did this video, we posted it online, and right away there was a family that wanted to adopt him. And our daughter Havala was little at the time, and she would always, whenever we'd watch the video, she'd say, at the end of the video, I say, the biggest dream we have for Vlad is that we would, he would have a family of his own, and that he would be adopted. And she's like, but we don't really want anyone to adopt him. Right, Mom? Because we want to adopt him.
Did she say that with her cute little pink glasses? Oh my gosh. Oh, those glasses were so cute. Oh my goodness gracious. So all your kids are basically conspiring against your logic.
Yeah. And then it didn't work out with that family because they were too young. There wasn't a big enough age difference between them and him. So he was tiny, he was too old. So one morning, Jed woke up and he was just like, what are we waiting for? Like, we have the ability. We love him. He needs a family. Like, it's scary. Older child adoption is scary, and a lot of people don't recommend it because those kids have had a lot of years of trauma behind them, and if you have other children in your home, you need to be super aware, and you need to be super vigilant about safety and all of that.
Yeah, of course.
But we were like, just felt like in the beginning how our journey started, like, okay, like this is a forever decision. Like, can we do this? And actually Vlad has the same diagnosis, the same syndrome as the original boy that we were going to adopt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's called Apert syndrome, and it's super rare.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, we just did it. We adopted him. It's almost
so from the time, so it's been a year? 2 years?
It's almost been 3 years.
Has it been 3 years? Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah. So he's almost 18 then.
Yeah. This month he's 18.
Oh my goodness.
I know. He's a man.
Holy smokes. So, okay. So he is writing. He is reading.
Yeah. He's learning to read Ukrainian. He can write beautifully, and he has no fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his feet are really quite, I would say, mangled would be the best. Almost like when, like, they almost look like, when they bound the feet of like where they're quite bound together.
Yeah. He doesn't have toes or fingers. Everything is all fused and crazy.
But how cute were his little pictures? Oh, my stars.
Like Benjamin Button.
Oh. He was the cutest. Oh, I was like, oh my heavens. So this is what shows me the power of love and connection and redemption and grace. He probably would have continued to stay institutionalized because no one had ever given him the opportunity to be loved, be touched, be nourished. So I guess one of the things that, so we have to be realistic in the sense that not all children are going to be adopted out, or they may not be able to ever be out of that system right now.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you guys are bringing into the orphanage right now to really support these boys? What are some of the things? I know you've got like interns, you've got more nannies now. Like, what are some of the things that you guys have been working on that you've done and are working on still?
So we have a team of volunteers through a local church that we partner with.
And they're super young and like super.
Yeah.
They're
the name of the church in Ukrainian is Christian Youth Church.
Is it?
Yeah. Which Jed's like, what's going to happen when everyone grows up? But it's all young people on our team. And so Wide Awake, our nonprofit, gives a grant to the church that pays for Vika, who is our volunteer coordinator. And it pays transportation for the team to go back and forth to the institution. So we have a team of volunteers. Sometimes it's a few, sometimes it's many, that goes 3 times a week to spend time with the boys in the institution. And then we also have interns. We had 3. They're just finishing up. their 2-year internship, and we have two more new ones.
Yep. Are they high school or college age kids?
They're college age.
And are they studying in Ukraine?
Yeah, so our original 3 interns have done their 2 years, and now they're actually going off to like higher level university to study related fields like special ed or,
Beautiful.
it's hard to find things in Ukraine that are super relatable to what we're doing. But yeah, it's time for them to like get their degree and then see what happens next. And then, so the interns go 3 days a week, 3 full days a week to the institution. And we developed a functional skills assessment. It's kind of like an ages and stages type questionnaire that moms fill out for their babies. So it's for the guys in that building that are the highest level of need where Vladik lived. And the goal is to increase each boy's level of functional skills to prepare them for life outside of the institution.
Can I just ask you one quick question? Of the children that are socially institutionalized, as in the parents still have their parental rights, I would assume, or something along those lines, do they come?
There's a handful of a handful that come.
Yeah.
Every so often. I think it would be super hard to come and see your kid living like that.
It would be brutal.
Yeah.
And there's so much shame and isolation and guilt around special needs children in Eastern Europe in general. Like, I watched a documentary about the interview. Maybe it was you who shared it, or I just saw it online and I just bawled my brains out, because it was one woman was just fighting tooth and nail to keep her child.
Yeah.
I think you might have saw it, right? And she was she was just going to do it. She was going to get the skills, and she was working really hard to keep her child. And then the other mom, remember, she was sitting on a park bench or something, and she was talking about how she was told that they were going to be fine. And then I think the baby ended up dying. And she had put so much trust in. Yeah. So, sorry, that was just a random tangent. I think people need to understand, I think from a Western culture, we're well, why would you do that? And what are these women doing? It's but the cultural expectation is that you can't handle them, in quotations. You can't handle this special needs child. We can, but it is changing. So you're bringing in ages and stages. You're also bringing in a lot of sensory, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Music and touch and massage.
Yeah, we have one friend who comes and does massage once a year. She does a month of it, and then she tries to train the interns a bit to do that. Yeah, we bring music. The interns have to use a variety of different ways to reach the boys. And, because some of them, when we first started going, couldn't even handle human touch.
Wow.
And so they've come a super long way from there. But yeah, whatever it takes to reach each individual boy, we try to do.
Can you tell me about I can't remember, is it Ben, who was super duper 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 thin and really tiny, 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 and was adopted by the young family with 2 young boys?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about his story.
Yeah, so we had, this was I don't even know. This was in 2014, I think. We had 2 boys were transferred to the institution from the baby house orphanage. They were 6 years old, and they were both not mobile. They both laid in cribs all the time. And the institution we're at is not set up for those kind of kids, the little small, only take a bottle type kids. And so we went there one day. They had just arrived. The nannies were trying to get them to take a spoon because they don't even have bottles at our institution. And they were afraid that the other boys would hurt them. And so they would just go in, try to feed them really fast, put them back in the crib, and lock the door so that nobody else would go in there. So these 2 boys are just laying in these cribs 24 hours a day, except taken out for feeding and then just put right back in. And one of them, his name, we called him Ben. When we advocate for them, we have to use fake names. So we called him Ben. He was so tiny. At one point, he got down to, I think it was 6 kilos.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's That's what Ainsley was when she was 9 months old. No,
Yeah.
less, maybe 6 months old.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we went away. So we met them and then we went away to help with that summer camp. And we came back 2 weeks later and they were like already fading. And we were like, well, they're going to die. We have to, like, they're going to die. This is not sustainable. So Wide Awake hired a nanny, and then another partner organization in the same city hired a nanny so that they could take care of them in a room by themselves so that they would get good meals and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Ben never did thrive. I mean, he had a lot of, all his diagnosis said was failure to thrive and like acid reflux. But I think so much of his was emotional. It's all tied together where, they stem, like you see some boys that hit themselves, some boys, reflux their food, some boy, I think so much is like their personality, their trauma as a baby, how they're able to handle like a terrible environment. So he never did thrive. One German partner of ours, they brought doctors in and
I remember,
they saved his life. They
wow.
figured out how we could feed him where he could at least stop losing, but he was adopted.
It was a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Like he has 2 adorable brothers. Like they're all like 3 under, like they're all like really close in age.
They look
And
like
he
triplets.
yeah, they do. They actually do. They do. They really do. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. One is, what's the beauty? Where's the beauty, Kim? Where do you find the beauty in all of this like tragedy and trauma and just like, oh my goodness, where is the beauty for you?
I think anytime that they get out, anytime there's rescue, it's such a huge boost to our faith, to our team. We have guardianship. So we adopted Zla and then we took guardianship in December of Boris. He's 26 and he lived at that institution for 20 years.
Yeah.
And he's the size of my 9-year-old.
Wow,
my
he's
8 and
tiny.
9-year-old was right in the middle of them. Yeah. And, it's a whole new ball game with him. He's been so broken by people and by the system, a broken system, and, but you get these guys out and they still have their struggles. Like it's not easy, but they start to grow hair, they're not shaved heads. They start to grow hair. They start to like come alive. Like Boris was silent at Romanov at the institution. He was silent. He was like a little shell person. And now like he is so loud. He's like, he doesn't talk, but he's so loud. He's like the loudest person in our family. Like he's just like laughing and
he has the best laugh.
Verbal vocalizing things. Yeah.
He has the best laugh ever. Like I remember you were like, I finally caught it. And it was just like this belly laugh, just like, it was just joy, like pure, unadulterated joy. And I loved when you were talking about just teaching him things like putting his socks away and putting his pants away and just that patience, like such intense patience on your part with you and Jed, just an incredible amount of patience. How has it strengthened your marriage? How has it tested your marriage? And how has it strengthened your marriage doing what you're doing?
I think because we, like, before when we lived in the US, like Jed had his job and he would go away to his job and then he would come home and, we would be parents and together. But now like we're just on this like crazy journey, but like we don't know what we're doing. Like we're just trying to be obedient to what God asked us to do. Like we've got this big huge vision and big dreams, but how to get there, like we don't have anybody to ask, how did you do that, So I feel like there's not really anybody else that gets it except us. Like we get it because we're the two that are in it. And so where one of us will really be struggling, like it can be really hard to, it's a hard journey. Like, we chose it and it's our joy, but it's also really hard.
Yeah.
And when I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, this is the worst, like, he's feeling encouraged. And then the opposite, when one is weak, the other is strong. And I love how God does that. But yeah, we are just totally partners on this. Like, neither one of us could do it alone.
No, you couldn't.
And so it's like we're a team, and we didn't have that before as much as we have it now. Like, we're just like linking arms, like, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. But another thing about like what is beautiful there is that I forgot to say is that when anybody who goes to the institution, like, there is something special about these boys. Like, they should not have any joy, but everybody who goes there is like, I thought I was going there to like help them, but they are so beautiful, and they have this inner, some of them, you can see their sorrow. Oh, they're angry, they're sorrowful, they're so broken and so beaten down. And those ones really break my heart. But the vast majority of them, like, they don't care who you are. They don't care what you've done. They don't care how many followers you have or what your job title is or how much money you have. They don't care. All they care is that you are there with them. And in that moment, you have each other. And they're not distracted by anything. They have no phone. They have no TV shows. They have no where else they would rather be. They're just like, you being with them is like their greatest joy. And they teach us all the time how just being together is such a gift. And the greatest, we tell people when they first visit, leave your camera in the car, leave your phone in the car. Like, these boys have already had everything stolen from them. And
yes.
They deserve for us to be fully with them because they're fully with us.
I love that.
It's being with them is like, I don't know. It's terrible and it's awesome, like, all at the same time.
It's like, it's this massive like juxtaposition, the most beautiful presence you'll ever be in the most one of the most tragic situations you could ever imagine. I really love about what you guys have done is sometimes I get really weary of what I call show pony tours of, well-intended people going and seeing orphanages, taking photo ops, and, walking away going, oh, I feel so much better about myself. It was so amazing. I mean, that has never, ever, ever been any part of your story. It's like, we're here to serve these boys. And I absolutely fundamentally love that about you. And that's why I wanted you on the podcast. That's why I want people to know about what you're doing. Even if people are like, it's not the season for us to adopt. It's not the season for us to help out in the Ukraine, but we can give financially to you to support you so that you can continue to do that on the ground. Because it does get a little bit messy with nonprofits overseas. You never know if the money's getting there. You don't know if it's paying the CEO. You don't know if it's paying for gala nights. Like, those things are important, but I know in my heart, every time that Andrew and I donate, it's going as much as possible is going into a mission to help serve these boys. And I love what you've done. And I honor you for what sacrifices you've made. And also how much you're pushing against a cultural system that is going to take a long time to change. So with that, where can we find you and how can we support you?
So you can find our website is www.wideawakeinternational.org. Although that's just like where to find like the information about,
and also to donate as well.
Yeah, but the main, like, we have Facebook. You can find us on Facebook. I think it's Facebook.com/Hearts Wide Awake, because Wide Awake is already taken. And that's where I try to update a lot on there, the different things that are happening. It's just the easiest. And then we also have a family blog, wideawakefamily.com. And you can read about what got us to this point more in depth there.
And I would encourage all of you who are listening to go make a cup of tea or a coffee and just read their stories. It's incredible. And watch the videos. And it's just, you're just inspiring. I mean, I think we live in a culture where we're very hyper consumed with what we have and what we project that we have and what, I call it the fame chasing. And, God is really speaking to my heart too. Like, okay, so what's the point of the exercise? Like at the end of the day, what's the point of the exercise, Michelle? Like, what is the point of the exercise? And I think for you, I'm sure there are people around you when you said we're going to uproot all of our children and move to the Ukraine. They thought, what on earth are you doing?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like for 2 or 3 weeks. It was like indefinitely. Forever. Like we're indefinitely going to do this. It isn't just like a 2-year contract. So thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for showing people what courage and risk and also faith looks like.
Well, it is our joy. It's, we're super lucky that we're living our dream.
I love that. I think
in the Bible, it talks about God giving you the desires of your heart, but he's the one who puts those desires in you. And then when you're seeking him, when you're saying yes to him, you get to realize those desires that he originally planted inside of you. And so
I love that.
Yeah, it's our joy. It's hard sometimes, but it's our joy and we're happy to do it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And at some point in my life, I will come and visit you. Yes. I know I will. And I will continue. And we will continue to support you because I feel like what you're doing is what I feel we should be doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today. If you'd like more information about myself, my journey, my public speaking engagements, or life coaching with me, please head to my website, mishpope.com. If you can kindly leave me a beautiful review on iTunes, I would be forever grateful. I can't wait to connect again in the next episode.